Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey. I'm the CEO of Treasury Webinars. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar today, Managing Cash and Risk in the World of Global Economic Uncertainty. Really excited about our webinar today. It's really, for the most part, based on a survey that I just conducted, and we had over 250 responses. So we'll really see some interesting results, some benchmarks. You'll get to learn how Treasury professionals have responded already to unforeseen changes in global dynamics driven by many things: trade policies, rhetoric, geopolitical uncertainty, and conflicts that are going on across the globe. And all that means is that we need to be more cognizant of ever of all of our cash movements and really looking at and actively managing our risk exposures. So it's more important than ever that we have our finger on the pulse of those cash movements and get as much predictability as possible into our accounts payable and accounts receivable and things that we need to do to adjust to our changes in risk. Before we dive in, I want to thank my thought leadership partner, Bottom Line. They share my commitment to thought leadership, but also to impacting the professional success of those that use their solutions. And I want to note Bottom Line is also the sponsor of the survey that we are going to go over today, and look for blogs and a full survey report on the Bottom Line website as well. So we're excited about that. A few housekeeping items before we really dive in. If you'd like a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all the polling questions and remain on for the duration of the webinar. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, please send an email to Ernie at treasurywebinars.com. There is a lot of content information in this presentation. Again, the presentation will be great, but also look for the full survey report and those blogs as well on the Bottom Line website. Also, if you did not indicate you are interested in receiving a certificate of attendance for today's webinar during the registration process, please just let me know. And I'd appreciate everyone's consideration in taking a short survey at the end of our webinar today. So just a little bit of an overview on our journey together today. First, I'm going to give you some survey overview, some of the demographics, and then we'll kind of dive into the survey results. One of the things I like to do is look at the lay of the land. So what conditions are Treasury and finance teams facing, right, as we are expected to deal with all this uncertainty that's going on? And it's obviously magnified if we have suppliers in other countries, if we have operations in other countries, and then it's just the impact has got to be everywhere. Maybe your customers, right, have those relationships and they have suppliers. So it's impacting everyone. And then we're going to dive into the survey results, talk about cash management silos and opportunities. And then we're going to give you some benchmarks on how companies are making changes to navigate global markets uncertainty. And some of those we'll look at the investments that they're making in technology. And then we'll share several key survey results and takeaways. I'm always excited in my survey analysis when I'm able to share results by specific industries and by company size. As I was a Treasury practitioner at a mid-market company, I always like to look at survey results by my company size, but also I worked in manufacturing, so I would have loved to have seen some results based on Treasury teams that practice in the manufacturing industry, and happy to say that there are 4 key industries that we'll really be able to dive in on today as well. So it's incredibly relevant. And so, as always, my goal is to get you to take an action from our time together today, whether that's to ask a question, send an email to someone, have a conversation with someone across your organization. So that is what we are about. We are about impacting your career success, and we need to inspire you to take actions from our time together today. So let's dive into the survey results. Again, we had over 250 survey responses. So we'll see we had a very good mix of folks from treasurer, assistant treasurer, director of treasury, 53%, and then also treasury manager and treasury analyst. So I think it's important that we get the perspective of those, right, who are at the very top of the org chart, but also those who are involved in the execution and delivering the information oftentimes up the org chart in order to inform better decisions and react in as much as real time as possible. Again, a lot of the things that are important to me as I talk about what's going on in 2025 is just these risk exposures, right? Having some predictability in those risk exposures, being able to look at those risk exposures, and also having the technology available to work with our FP&A colleagues as well and look at the impacts of, really some dynamics and scenarios that we probably never thought were possible. So it's definitely an exciting time, an interesting time, and the good news is it's going to give us an opportunity as Treasury and Finance folks to be called to the strategic table, right? If we're not the CFO, to the CFO and even the others in the C-suite. So it's exciting. So we also had a good mixture of annual revenue size, and we also had a good distribution by employee size. When I talk about small, mid-market, and enterprise, for small companies, I usually look at it zero to 99 employees or 100 employees, and then 101 to 1,000 is mid-market, and then over 1,000, that's where I set my enterprise size. So some of the top industries that we looked at here, again, we had some good concentration, and I would say for the industries, manufacturing, which is where I come from, which is exciting for me, healthcare and health services, real estate, education, insurance, and software technology as well. So we had a pretty good distribution of industries as well. And again, I'm really excited for the survey results, especially for those of you who work in those specific industries. Of course, the results are absolutely extremely relevant for those, no matter what industry you work at. Again, a lot of times it's just about absorbing the information and then having conversations and benchmarking, seeing, okay, companies are doing X, Y, Z. Okay, ask yourself the question, have we looked at that? If we're not doing this, why aren't we doing this? Are there better ways for us or discussions that we have in order to collaborate more effectively and or invest in technology? And in these times of volatility, or when companies actually, the ones that take advantage of it, actually that's a competitive advantage, and it's actually an opportunity for growth, as opposed to just, you have to play defense well, but volatility also gives the opportunity to play offense as well. So let's take a look at what I call the lay of the land. So I like to ask this in all my surveys: what's the role of Treasury Department within your organization? Key advisor to the CFO. We'd like that to be higher as 20%. We really had a much higher percentage than I've seen in my surveys of 250 companies or more, at 27%. So a lot of what I like to focus on is the opportunity. So even if we're supplying data, we're an occasional advisor, that means we have the opportunity to become a key strategic advisor to the CFO. So to me, that's all about communicating with impact. So we're providing the information. Are we doing the analysis? Are we communicating the analysis? Does the CFO and the C-suite understand really the unprecedented view that we have across the organization? So it's not that you should panic if you're purely transactional. This is a great opportunity for you to really elevate your role. And again, if you're in either of these buckets, right, occasional advisor or supplier of data, you have an opportunity to make that impact. So I've been doing my Treasury Truth or Dare podcast, had a lot of conversations with Treasury professionals, and what I keep hearing is that those that have a seat at the strategic table, they have had to communicate the brand of the Treasury Department up to the CFO. So that's something that we need to actively manage. Communicate the brand of Treasury across your organization and also up to the CFO. So when you have that solid brand, right, it gets up the chain, then that's when Treasury is going to get tapped on the shoulder for those strategic conversations. Also, what I've seen is that the folks that have that more strategic role, oftentimes they are called relative to risk management. So those of you that are in the area of risk, that's where you need to take the role. If you don't have that counterparty risk role, that's an opportunity for your Treasury Department to take more of an active role, and that is when you are going to get uh, tapped on the shoulder to attend the strategic meetings and become a partner, right? Oh, this is going on. Who's the first person? Oh, I got to contact the treasurer. It might just be, oh, I need to contact the treasury manager. Wouldn't that be nice? For I was a treasury manager. So we like to slice and dice the survey results. So I apologize if this is a little fast and furious at times, and there's just a lot of information to absorb. So at the end, I pull out some of the key points that I'll touch on as I go through all these different slides and slices and dices. If you can't tell already, I was a quantitative person back in my day, and I used to be the TA at a quant PhD level class. But so don't ever get me started on that one. Okay, so it's interesting to look at the role by company size. Again, enterprise I would say is over 1,000 employees, mid market 100 to 1,000, and then small would be less than 100. So it's good to see, right, that Treasury that we have the highest amount in our enterprise in the key advisor, and also were looked at as purely transactional in 19%. So those are the ends of the bell. So we like to maximize the top end and minimize the bottom end of the bell. So where you stand, right, depends on where you sit. And there's also you got to look at this is a sample of when we get down to these things we're looking at 50, 60, 70 companies. So it's a good conversation point, right? But it's not like this represents the whole universe accurately. So you got to be careful on making your inferences on these. So then it's interesting to me to see. So I took the industries with the four biggest concentration of responses. We have healthcare, education, real estate, and manufacturing. And I've seen this in my survey results as well. The healthcare folks seem to not have access to the CFO and be that key advisor. And to me, there's a lot of opportunity there because the folks that I talk to that work in healthcare, I've had a couple podcast guests, they absolutely have an impact on their company's success. So I think it's about better communication. So you can see, right, they're supplying the data at almost like 50%, and there's that opportunity to rise to that strategic partner. So it's about communicating those results with impact as well. And then just kind of looking at manufacturing, that's relatively lowest on the purely transactional side of things. So that sticks out. But then we also see that education, where folks that work in education institutions have probably the biggest challenge in looking at and being purely transactional. So I know that some of you in education who are out there are probably nodding their heads, yes, yes, yes. So it's good to see where you might see and say, okay, I'm in manufacturing, I'm in healthcare, I see this at my company as well. And sometimes what I always do is encourage folks to reach out to your treasury peers within your network. Hey, you're in the healthcare industry. You are viewed as purely transactional. Maybe you see someone contributing or speaking at conferences at a healthcare organization that may be of similar size as yours, and they are looked to as a strategic partner. Have that conversation there. Wow, what are you guys doing at your company? How have you been able to get that strategic seat at the table? How can we collaborate more effectively and communicate more effectively up the ladder in the office of CFO, but also to your organization? So I wanted to look at the lay of the land, obviously, just to look at the impacts. And so what I would it's we'd expect to see more impacts on the actions that folks are taking. If folks have international accounts payable or international accounts receivable, and I take that, the very basic definition is, okay, do we have payables in more than one currency in at least two or more territories across the world? And international accounts receivable, right? Do we have customers that are paying us or yeah, paying us in multiple currencies or located in multiple countries across the globe? And then there's also obviously also complications. We could have folks that are international that are paying us in U.S. dollars, which we would like to have to remove that transactional risk, but we all can't do that. So just what speaks to me is, yes, we are speaking to the audience where we are expecting to see some of the biggest impacts, right? There's going to be more, the dynamics are going to be more, they're going to have a higher magnitude in those markets. So I'm going to go ahead and launch first polling question for you today. So one of the things that I often talk about, the lay of the land in Treasury, is I ask folks, what is your degree of ownership and control in different areas that I know impact cash management success? So I'm asking you to share. In which area does your team have the least amount of influence? Do you have the least amount of influence in AP, AR, and Treasury technology? If you're interested in receiving a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all our polling questions. I appreciate everyone's consideration and just taking a minute to push the button for us. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and leave this up for another couple seconds, and then we'll compare the results to what I've seen in the survey, and we'll also take a look at these results, slice it and dice it a little bit by industry and by company size as well. So let me go ahead and, all right, everyone, thank you so much for taking a second there and pushing the button for me. All right, let's take a quick peek there. And so we see accounts receivable is really high, 68%, and treasury technology is still relatively high. So, I mean, as a treasury professional, it would be nice if we had control of that technology. And actually, when we leverage the SaaS-based solution, and actually lessens our burden with IT. And then I'm a bit surprised to see accounts payable is so low. And from my perspective, accounts payable is a place where I'm seeing an awful lot of volatility. My wife works in procurement, so I've seen some honestly potentially devastating things going on, and just the dynamics of not going on with tariffs, no tariffs. Sorry, I said the T word, but there's a lot of volatility. So I'm going to go ahead. So let's keep that in mind. We had almost 70% AR and only 5% AP. So thank you so much, everyone, for taking that second. And so let's take a look at the control and influence of Treasury. So just to look at direct control, indirect control, and influence, and then no influence. So these are areas that impact Treasury success. So I really focused here on Treasury technology, AP, and accounts receivable. Obviously, these things are important as well. Data integrity and management, and also we'd like to have control and influence over FP&A, and company strategy would be ideal. So if we look at Treasury technology, just as we saw in our survey results, right, there's over 1/4 said they don't have much control there, and you're not alone. So it's still pervasive that a lot of companies don't have direct control over the treasury technology, and that's kind of obviously an inherent barrier, because obviously in today's world there's a lot of opportunities to upgrade your technology in a cost-effective manner to impact your company's bottom line. So those are conversations that we would do well to have, but also to just have conversations with IT. And if your CFO is in charge of the tech stack, you really directly communicate, hey, if we want to invest in technology, we're probably the ones that should have the lead on that. But also, what we can do is lower the burden on our IT team. So that's a big selling point as well. I've always been a proponent of having AP and AR report up to Treasury. So we are seeing AP from our respondents over 40%, and AR even higher. So I think that may become more common as we continue to see volatility as well. So this is a slide where I say this is a slide I would like to print out and just think about it, have conversations with my treasury team, and say, okay, my team, where do you guys feel that we're at? And then, okay, why are we there? And then what would the impact be if we could have more influence, or we could have more control over that? And then what is the value to doing that? And can I communicate that with the CFO, or could I just have conversations with AP and AR and IT to have a more collaborative relationship? So the more collaboration that we have, the more influence that we have, and then as we collaborate effectively, we're going to get to a point of indirect control, and then at some point we'd like to see that direct control When I was in treasury professional, every day the whole thing was control of cash. So to me, control of cash means controlling treasury technology, AP, AR, and well, we should have financial risk management on here as well, but operational risk management, that counterparty risk management is becoming more important than ever. And just a little bit on that, a little preview on that side. So what we're seeing with a lot of companies is they are having to look at new partners to help mitigate the risk in certain markets, whether that be supplier side or customer side. So we have to look, right? So we have to look into different suppliers. We need to be able to manage those risks. And then we might also have to look at different banks we might not have looked at. And then as we're looking at banks, guess what? We're going to have some interesting KYC, know your customer requests, but we're also going to be able to manage the financial health of organizations probably located in different countries than we've looked at. It might maybe that we're actually looking more to work more in the U.S. On some level, depending on the impacts on those counterparties that we have. Just more lay of the land. Yeah, we always have to do this one. The main cash management tool that our respondents have. We still have a lot of folks in Excel. Uh, I am excited to see that 38% are using a TMS solution. So Excel is still pervasive. Just give you kind of the lay of the land. So the tool that you use can obviously inhibit your ability to manage cash in general, but especially in times of volatility, understand where you're at, let alone predict what's going to happen, and then let alone be able to respond with a strategy that's going to help meet your needs in alignment with your risk tolerance. So just do a little slicing this one by the key industries that we're looking at. So we see a lot more Excel in education, and if you remember back, our education folks were looked at as purely transactional. So that makes it even more painful because they don't have the right systems in place in general. So just interesting to see. We have ERP is also more relevant, so it's kind of a barbell there. What we see in is more technology, I would say, at least TMS side. We have manufacturing and real estate. We still see an awful lot of folks in the ERP as their main tool. And what I always say is a lot of these tools, you can use them with your ERP to, I would say, supercharge, right, the information that you already have in your investment in your ERP. It's not just, I'm going to shut my ERP down because I'm going to invest in some treasury AP or AR technology. It's that we're going to be able to supercharge, right, the value of that ERP in delivering that data in real time, often between our systems. So let's get into it. What about the impacts of economic uncertainty? So one of the things I just wanted to get a sense of is, okay, what kind of conversations are we having? Are treasury folks being pulled into more conversations? And are treasury people having the right conversations when this uncertainty comes up? So we asked our senior management request information about the impacts of the dynamics, which was good, right? So this speaks to, okay, you're being called to this strategic table by senior management. So that's good. But we have to have the tools to do that. Conversations with banks, right? It's good, 80%. So you should be having conversations with your banks, and if your banks haven't reached out already, and especially if you know there's going to be impacts on your AP and AR, might want to communicate that with your banks. And some of the things that are absolutely going on is some of these unforeseen conditions are absolutely going to really start to lean on folks' bank covenants. And so we may need to have those difficult conversations with our banks, and we may need to go and ask somehow for some flexibility in our covenants and really understand that. So obviously you say, okay, these assumptions were what they were, and I never expected a 200% tariff. Not that I wanted to, but that actually happened. But these expectations, and these are things that we couldn't have planned for. So we'd like to talk to you as a partner and navigate these times together. The conversations with suppliers, it's good that folks are having those conversations, and then conversations with customers. And so it's good to see that Treasury professionals are being pulled in and having those conversations, because obviously those things are going to impact our cash. And the manufacturing with our suppliers, right? This is going to impact our production. It's going to impact our work in progress. It's going to impact how we serve our customers. So that impacts our customers. And then we have impacts on our customers, right? And their sales and their ability to pay us. So there's an awful lot of dynamics going on. These two slides are great to show you that we are being pulled to the strategic table. And so if you not sure if you've had these conversations within your treasury team or talk to your treasurer, just ask the question, hey, I was on this webinar. Pretty interesting. Just curious if I would know a little bit more about those conversations that we're having. Then when we get further, you can say, oh, I've seen the companies doing XYZ. Have we looked at that? And then maybe, oh, we be able to make more informed decisions if we had the right technology in place to do that. So before we dive on the survey results, I'm going to go ahead and launch next polling question, which really gets to the impacts that companies have seen or expected to see. So I'm asking you to share how the volatile economic conditions impacted your company in 2025. Already, have you seen increased cost? Have you had to go to a select all apply a new approach to managing risk exposures, increased need for project financing? Have you shifted or considered new suppliers? Or have you executed more trades to manage risk exposures? So this is one of the interesting questions that we ask of our survey respondents. So ask a little bit different way. I think we asked in the survey expected or expect those. And I'll tell you, the number is very low that companies have reported that they don't see any kind of impact. So just want to remind everyone, if you are interested in receiving a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all the polling questions. So I haven't seen my percentage answered creep up as much as I would like. So I'll give you guys a few more seconds. Also want to remind you, if you would like a certificate of attendance and or a copy of today's presentation, please go ahead and send an email to ernie@treasurywebinars.com. So let me go ahead and share the results here, and then we'll take a look at how those compare to what we've seen in our survey. And then what we'll do is we will go ahead and take a look at those results by some survey demographics. So thank you everyone who responded. So all right, so what we see is we have 55% increased costs. That's over half already. New approaches to managing risk exposures, 23%. That's significant as well. Not so much impact on project financing or new suppliers yet. Obviously, that depends on the demographics of those of you in the audience. So there may be some of you that don't have meaningful exposures in AP and AR, and so that can lead to some of the other results. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And so let's look at what we've seen in our survey. What is really surprising to me is on the low end of the scales, all of these are over 28%. So 45% already impacted cost. New approaches to manage exposures. Again, as you saw, a lot of these folks have international APR exposures, but the volatility has been so unexpected. They've had to manage their approaches, right? They've needed some project financing for working capital, 42% of the companies, trades that they might not have expected, 38%. And this is obviously most relevant to manufacturing, inventory management strategies, and then suppliers or sourcing or shifting or considering or shifting 30%. So it's good that we're thinking about these decisions, how to mitigate those. And so these are all ways that if you don't know the answer to these questions, you should be thinking about these. All right. Has it impacted our costs, our supplier costs? We need to be looking at that. How, why? Why did it happen? Are we just accepting these costs? What do our contracts look like? So especially those of you, excuse me, in Treasury, it's like, okay, let's start to look at when our, excuse me, supplier contracts are going to come up and how do we renegotiate those. So I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago to talk about how to negotiate those impacts, and don't just accept those increases don't just accept all that risk, and some of those should be triggered by specific actions and not just, hey, there was something on the news that the a, a penalty or a tariff's going to go up by 50%. Oh, well, we got to charge you guys 50%. So we need to be involved in those conversations. We need to be involved with our procurement folks as well, as they are really dialed into what those impacts could be, on our inputs, our ability to deliver product, and the costs, right? What do our margins look like? And how do we focus on our customers, impacts on our customers? Do we need to focus on certain products that have high margin? So maybe we need to back off a little bit on our marketing of these certain products because there's no longer a high margin there. Those margins may have gone away. So a lot of interesting scenarios to look at. So this is pretty small, but the good news is you can have the slides. So we looked at this results by company size as well, and it's interesting to see. I guess you could say that somewhat correlation, maybe a lot between your exposures and your company size. But if you look at enterprise, you start to say, wow, all these things are over 40%. Shifting or sourcing new suppliers, increased project financing. Those have their much relative higher values. Executing trades or managing exposures, that number is almost half. New approaches even to managing exposures, right? 48%. So it's really interesting to see what those results look like. Again, depending on company size. Again, where you stand depends on where you sit. And then we take a look at these by our key industries that we're looking at: healthcare, education, real estate, manufacturing. So what I usually do is there's a lot to digest. So if I was in one of these industries, I'd look at those bars, but I start to look at where, okay, manufacturing, the blue bar, not surprising, right? Hedges or managed risks exposures, that's 51%. So not surprising on some level, but you look at where it's had the biggest impacts. We're going to look in manufacturing. We'll see it actually has been used to increase domestic sales, which I find encouraging. Inventory strategies, obviously, that makes most sense. Manufacturing, alternative suppliers, so that number's high. A couple other things. One of the other things that sticks out here is the healthcare, working capital or financing projects. So there's some exposures and dynamics going on there. So again, just a lot of information to take in. Just wanted to give you a few highlights of those, but we'll see that those impacts are definitely dependent on size and industry as well. So what about changes in supply chain strategy? This number is pretty big. 47% already had, and there's less than 20% that say not yet, no, and no, not likely at all. So there's only 1% that says not likely at all, not yet, but possible. So you should be involved in those supply chain strategies. And again, it's looking at, okay, what is our supply chain? What are the risk exposures that we have now? How do we model changes that may take place? And then how do we look at some of the things, the financial health of those in our supply chain? How do we expand our supply chain? What are the opportunities there? And then if we look to expand that supply chain, that might absolutely mean that we need to look at some working capital. We may need to look at increasing our exposures in certain currencies if we're looking across certain markets. So just interesting conversations that you want to be having. And then we look at changes in supply chain strategy. By company size, we see the biggest impact from our respondents, the mid-market companies. So I find that interesting. And then if you look at enterprise, you have 79% already have, but very likely. So there's a lot of dynamics going on there. And then if we take a quick peek at our key industries, we see education is interesting. We have a spike there, and then we have a little bit of a spike here. I think the rest is fairly consistent. So I mean, again, there's a lot of dynamics going on. A lot of these graphics and results and potential inferences are just to get you to be having these conversations, right? Look at that supply chain health. What are the dynamics? What should we be doing on it? What impact does that have, right? It can have impacts on both sides, your cost and your customers and your receipts as well. So then we're going to get in a little bit more specifics on some common metrics that we use to manage cash management success. So let's go ahead and launch that poll. So we asked this question in our survey as well. How have the volatile economic conditions resulted in an unexpected change to your DPO and or DSO in the past 6 months? So has this impacted your DPO only, your days payable outstanding, your days sales outstanding, DSO, excuse me, and DPO? Neither? No, but expecting changes. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to go ahead and answer that polling question. And obviously, where you stand depends on where you sit, but the DPO, right? You might expect to see changes if you have more likely to have changes if you have those international exposures and partners, and the same thing on the customer side as well for your DSO. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and keep the polling question up for another few seconds or so, and then we'll go ahead and take a quick peek at those results, and then we'll take a quick peek at how those results compare to what we've seen in our survey results. So I'm going to give you guys a few more seconds to go ahead and answer the question, and then we'll take a quick peek at these results. Again, I appreciate everyone that polling questions up. Just go ahead and click that button for me. We like as many responses as possible. All right, a couple more seconds. All right, thank you everyone for taking the moment to do that. And so what we see is that's pretty significant. DSO and DPO, so both of those, 27%, right? Another polling question I didn't want to ask too many would have been what industries, right? If we're seeing folks that match the key industries that we have, neither is 39%. So those of you that have seen neither by design, that's great. So just interesting to see. So let's keep in mind. So what we saw here was 27% DSO and DPO, and we had 39% was neither. And then we'll go ahead and see how that compares to our survey results. So what we see, increase in DPO in the respondents, we've already seen it, 41%. Not but expected to increase in the next 3 months, 33%. Not but expected to increase in the next 6 months. So over 90% of the companies surveyed have already experienced this, or they expect to experience that. So it's important that we communicate those changes to our suppliers and the impact as well, right? So how does that impact? Are we taking discounts? Right. So if we're taking discounts, we might lose those discounts, and those discounts could impact our margin and our bottom line. So we need to make sure that we are not missing on that. In this case, to me, this screams to me that, okay, we know that it's happened or it's going to happen. So it's important how we communicate that. And this impacts our supply chain as well. So what about by company size? We've seen the biggest impact among the respondents in the mid market already changed, and so what we still see, that's probably the biggest thing that sticks out to me. And then the enterprise is been it's on the tail a little bit more, but in the enterprise you only have 4-5% total, right? That's not expecting any change. So we are seeing the biggest changes really with the company size. And then if we look at that by the industries that we've been talking about as well, we've seen a lot on the education front, a big spike there, and then we're seeing the real estate has been more solid there. I guess that's not terribly surprising. And then we see, we're starting to see some variance about when these they might not have happened yet, but when these changes are going to take place, and we expect to see, excuse me, yet in Q3 healthcare, they're going to start to see a more of an impact. And again, we look at, okay, we expect these things to happen. What is that going to do to our financials. Obviously, you're looking at managing your working capital, you're looking at your balance sheet, you're looking at a lot of things, but just some interesting uh, benchmarks to have. Increase in day sales outstanding. We don't like to see that, right? We want to we want to get our money. 48% have already seen that, and then we only see again we see well over 90% are not expecting any change, and obviously the timing of that is important. So the predictability, right, of our payments has become more important than ever. So we should be looking to collaborate more with our sales team if we're not already doing that, and collaborating with our AR and credit teams as well. So we want to understand what might change, but we also don't want to have these nasty messages going on to all of our customers because our DSO has gone up. And we need to understand somewhat, okay, what industries are these folks in? Is it an excuse? Is there an excuse? Is it valid? So some companies might take advantage of that, but we need to really be cognizant of our customer relationship. So we expect to see it, we're seeing it. Okay, how do we manage that? How do we manage? And then obviously in talking with our customers, having a good relationship, okay, what does that increase look like? And then especially with our larger customers, okay, those days can become costly. And each day that you have better predictability, right, it's gonna save you money, maybe unnecessary borrowing costs, but also given the global markets, we don't want to be going into trades and taking actions and hedging and doing other things that are going to cause us to make decisions we would not have made if we would have had better information. So we're seeing big impacts on both sides. And then we look at by company size as well. It sticks out to me as a little bit on the enterprise size. Again, enterprise is over 1,000 employees. So we're seeing if we look at the first two buckets. So if we look at already changed or in the next 3 months, right? We're already almost at 70% there. And then it's still in the mid market, only 1% is expecting no change at all. So that's kind of a, I don't know, it's an eye opener. That's why we should be getting pulled into these conversations as treasury professionals and finance professionals. And then if we look at by industry as well. Just really quick, I don't really see anything that jumps out to me as well. And if we had more time, I would really start to get into, and we'll get into it in the survey reports. So we start to look at, okay, let's look at the industries. How do these results align across industries, right? Do they make sense? Can I explain those? And then by company size as well. So it's just interesting to dive deep in the data and have those benchmarks. We also asked folks about changes in their FX strategy. We've had 45% of the respondents already have. Again, and we're only seeing 5% are not planning on, don't expect any changes. So it's good to know that we are changing or we need to change our FX hedging strategies. So we need to have as much communication as possible, especially if as we have those exposures across those different markets, we need to get the best information possible and understand how those dynamics are going to change. How are our transaction relationships going to change? How are our transactional, my brain is not working, so much data, transactional and translation exposures, how are those going to change, right? And what do we need to be doing? And then are our natural hedges going to be changed? And maybe we need to look at changing in which currencies we pay and receive payments, and how much room do we have there, and how can that help us with our managing our FX risk, and how do we need to hedge more? Do we need to hedge less? Do we need to put ceilings or floors on? So that's a whole nother webinar that we could absolutely talk about on the FX side. And then what about your supplier cost increase? So we're only seeing 5% of companies not expecting that increase. So to me, it speaks to, obviously it's going to impact your margin. It's going to impact your bottom line. And then we need to know, okay, why did this increase? Was it in our contracts? And how does that work? How do we manage those increases? And then going forward, as we get into renegotiating those contracts, what are things that we can do to understand, expect, but also mitigate those cost increases and be a good partner. And also that's going to cause us to look to other sources as well, which is going to impact our supply chain and our strategy as well. So we need to be more collaborative, and there's probably going to be more focus on your collaboration between AP and procurement. And then if we have silos that exist, we need to make sure that we are breaking down those silos, especially now because the impact of those silos is magnified. And then just looking at it by company size as well, just to kind of show that we're looking at those. Again, this is what's in the slide for you to take more time to take a look at before. So we see that small companies have seen this. They're probably have the least amount of flexibility. They have to really like accept things, and you would hope that the enterprise companies have a way to push back in some sense. And then we start to see that it's going to really hit enterprise companies in a big way in the next 3 months or so. So that gets us up to 78%. So there's going to be some increases there. Hopefully, having some of that notice is going to help us plan right in what we're doing with our capital structure and in our cash movements and our borrowings and any investments we need to be managing, and also in our management of our bank covenants as well. So we look at the results by industry as well. We see, just real quick, education jumps out there as a big number as well. But then we see education really expects all of everyone in that area is expecting a cost increase, and healthcare is probably resilient, but the numbers 11% are not expecting to see it. And that number is a lot larger relative to the percentages that we see there. So what about the cash management? We talked about the lay of the land. Uh, Maybe I could have moved this up to the lay of the land, but I thought it fit here. So obviously we've had the theme. There's obviously a need for more collaboration. So we asked folks, how does Treasury collaborate with APAR sales and operations? We had a very optimistic folks, which I like. Strongly agree or agree. I don't believe that number is probably quite that high, but this is to give you the incentive to see that, hey, look, these people are collaborating. Do we not collaborate at our organization? Why? Why not? If we do, is it ideal, good, decent? How can we do better? And then what's the value going to be to our organization, Treasury, cash management, but also what is the value to these other areas in being more collaborating more with us in many areas? So then just collaboration, just do we collaborate with AP related to types and timings of payments? Again, I like it. It's optimistic, strongly agree. So just food for thought if you're not doing this. We should be collaborating with AP on types and timings. Hopefully we are doing that, or especially when the survey respondents, because their DPO is already going up or going to go up. So we need to be factoring that into obviously our forecast and communicating that with our suppliers as well. So just something like I share my story all the time. When I was in manufacturing, we really did not do this. I would say enough. We had a check runs a couple of days a week, and we had wires that were going out one day a week. We were cash rich, but it's still important to do so, because in cash, time is money with your cash. So we need to be collaborating on that, and then collaborating with AR to predict payments. Again, we had strong response there. Almost 90% agree or strongly agree. I would hope that you strongly agree. And then just, given the volatility, this collaboration is more important than ever. We're seeing it already, right? We're seeing so much impact on DSO and DPO. It's more important than ever that we have as accurate information as possible in terms of when money's going to be going out the door, and when money's going to be coming in the door, but also when the cash flows need to happen relative to all the currencies that we have exposures to across the globe. So let's talk about silos. So this is getting my soapbox here for a minute. So I always ask people in Treasury to please have this conversation with your team, with APAR Treasury. Do you have silos, right? What's the biggest one? AP and Treasury that I've seen. I've seen this for probably the last 4 or 5 years. I know it exists, not only from survey results. I have conversations. I go and speak at AP conferences, speak at Treasury conferences, and I know that's a common silo. Within your Treasury team, disappointing 48%. AR and Treasury, only 7% say no silos exist. So you should look in the mirror and say, okay, do we have these silos exist? And then what do we want to know? Why do they exist? And then how do we break those down? And then you can easily see the impacts of those silos in terms of productivity and data-driven decision making, which is going to impact the efficiency and effectiveness and risk exposures of our cash movements. So silos by company size. One of the things that sticks out to me is, well, I guess a smaller team, but it's good to see that in small companies, AP and Treasury is not as prevalent. What we see in AR and Treasury is a big spike, I would say, for enterprise companies. And so that is going to have a tremendous impact, right? So it's more important than ever that we know and understand when we're going to get those receipts and the currencies and those relationships with our customers. So for those enterprise sized companies, we're looking at they're going to have the biggest impact, but they also have a great amount of silos between those areas, and removing those silos can absolutely help companies of any size better manage their cash, and that technology can obviously help us do that. And then silos by industry, just interesting to see certain areas. Real estate has a little bit more, I would say, internal friction. Education seems to have a little bit more of a culture of collaboration. And then AR and Treasury is really big in the manufacturing space relative to everyone else. Just a few observations there. And at the end of the presentation, I give a bunch of bullet points for all these different slides. So in case you want to, get a really good summary of the key points that I made in every area as well. Again, just a lot of information, very interesting information. And this is one I've asked a couple times before, but here it is, right? So you have cash management silos. Okay, we have those, right? Excuse me. What's the cause of the silos? What we see to me is that there is not a culture of collaboration in terms of cash management. 27%, no real reason, no incentive to collaborate. 34%, not expected to collaborate. 13%, wow, right? And then we get to the technology side, don't have access to the same data, use different systems. So there's a big piece of it. But then also, I should say cause or causes, cash management silos. So you have there technology. The good news is technology can help on both fronts, right? You have no incentive to collaborate. Okay, maybe you're like, I can't see what's going on anyway from our side, so I can't see what's going on in AP. I can't see what's going on in AR. I can't see what's going on among my colleagues. And so having a culture of cash management and having it be successful, part of that means having to be able to see what you manage. So you can't manage what you can't see, and having visibility and trust for all those involved in the cash management side of it to have access to the same information so you don't have asymmetries of information. So eliminating asymmetries of information and communicating the value of collaboration, right, and expecting it and creating a culture of a joint accountability is going to mitigate a lot of the cash management silos, which is going to improve our decision making. So what are companies actually doing? And so let's take a quick peek at where we sit in the audience before I share the survey results. Go ahead and launch. So you can select more than one. Have you or are you expecting to invest in any of the following in response to unexpected market volatility in 2025? Maybe it's technology solutions to monitor risk, technology solutions to help trade or manage risk, data services. Maybe you're looking at your staff, your people, or you're looking at outside consultants to help manage and mitigate those risks. Again, if you're interested in receiving a certificate of attendance for today's webinar. You'll have to answer all the polling questions, and I would appreciate everyone's consideration in doing so. And again, if you would like a copy of today's presentation, please go ahead and send an email to Ernie@treasurywebinars.com. Again, I also want to remind you that the survey report is going to be coming out here within the next few weeks or so, and then those blogs as well, where you can take an even deeper dive into the survey results and get some of those inferences and really some cross inferences when you look at in total by company size and by industry as well, and just have the ammunition to have some conversations that are absolutely worth having, and then some benchmarks to help drive conversations and give your company and incentives and leaders incentives to have these conversations and see what other people are doing and ask, why aren't we doing these things? All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So interesting to see big investment, 43%, and identify and monitor risk. People are changing the staffs and people, and a pretty big percentage in consulting services. So you look at all this volatility, and it's good to see. The good news is we realize we have issues, and we are investing in that. So it's good to see companies doing that. And these are probably all areas that you should consider investing in if you haven't done so already. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. So we have 57% manage risk and help trade, data services. So 50% in three key areas. That's pretty powerful. To be respectful of time, again, I'll just share with you what I look for is the peaks and valleys. So as we start to go up, company size, not surprising that we see. It's good to see that we're seeing what we expected to see, the sanity check, I'll call it. And then due to market risk as well, what we see is some spikes in manufacturing, which we'd expect to see. And then I just ask folks to share the most important criteria in the Treasury solution. It's always good to see that it's not cost. So I would say all of these things. So this slide is a good way for you if you're looking to look at, okay, these are all conversations that I should be having. If it's a why, it's a why not. So interesting to see the importance there of these relative areas. And then again, just some more survey results here by company size and industry as well. And then it's good to see that these companies are support for modern analysis, intelligence, and AI learning. We're seeing that from small companies, which I think is one interesting results that I'll pull up. But then also the market reputation. I would love to see the market reputation of the vendor be one of the most important criteria there. So that's my preference as a treasury leader. And then by industry as well, we start to see the machine learning, just AI and machine learning. There's a real spike there in marketing, and then our education folks as well have that. And they also have more of a cost focus. If you think back to some of those education results, it seems like they are viewed as more transactional, so they may have less flexibility, right? On the investment side. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our final polling question here today as we make our closing comments. And I really appreciate everyone's consideration in answering the polling question, as I really appreciate the partnership of Bottom Line, and they are one of the companies that allows me to do what I do for free, and they are also a partner on this research as well. So it's obviously these conversations need to be had. It's always enlightening to see what any technology solution can help you do better, what you have, or at least benchmark what you have is what you need for your company and what you deserve to manage those risks. So some of the key results, I'm going to leave the polling question up for another few seconds. At least 30% of companies, there's already been a lot of impacts on the global uncertainty. Suppliers, supply chains, project financing, and new approaches to risk exposures, and it's impacting cost. So that is incredibly important as well. Supply chains, like I said, DPO, DSO, they're all increasing. So those are important. DSO, DPO is increasing. So there's a lot of dynamics there that you can look at. So this is a time for us we are getting called to that strategic table. Let's make sure that we are ready when we are called to that table. Again, a lot of summary results here, and I want to let everyone know, if you haven't seen, I've launched my Treasury Truth or Dare podcast. So if you haven't experienced that, just go ahead, please take a look. If you're interested in being a guest or know someone who would make a good guest, please go ahead and let me know, and I will reach out to you as well. Once again, thank my thought leadership partner, Bottom Line. And finally, to everyone, have the courage to live your treasury truths and dare to be great in everything that you do within and beyond your job.